Hello and good evening, everyone or anyone. My name is John, and welcome to the Old Folks Boogie 2 channel. And this is my 15 minutes. It's it's a it's a 15-minute video of me running my mouth every day. So welcome to it. Today, um, I was thinking today a lot about my time in the Army. Actually, a friend of mine actually called me. I need to get it back to him. A friend of mine, Don, I used to work with at Walmart, and who has remained a friend ever since, even past that. So he called me today to tell me that he has been watching my little YouTube video show. And that reminded me that Don and I, even though we never actually knew each other, we were stationed at the same place at the same time in the late '60s at Fort Riley, Kansas, in the same division, same everything. Amazing. I mean, there was lots of thousands of guys in that unit, so it's not surprising that we didn't know each other. But it was just weird that out of all the years that I've been out of the Army, 50 plus, right? So I got, yeah, 50 now, actually. 50, I got out of the Army 50 years ago on the 5th or 6th of January of this year. So 50 years since I was released. But anyway, in all of that time, and I run into a lot of people who were in the Army at the same time I was. Don is the only person I've ever known that was stationed at the same place I was at the same time. I talked to people who had been to Fort Polk, or but not when I was there, or who had been to Fort McClellan or Fort Campbell or Fort Knox or any of the places that I'd been. And a lot of guys were in Vietnam. I never knew a one of them that I've met since I came back. Not surprising. There was more guys in Vietnam than there was guys in Fort Riley, and I didn't know all of those either. but but anyway, Don reminded me of my when I think about it, I think about my time in the Army and what it represents, and what I didn't do with that time. What I I mean, maybe I tried. I don't know. Maybe I tried to do, but you know, I shouldn't say I didn't learn anything from my 3 years in the Army. That's not true. I did learn quite a bit, but what I didn't take out of the Army is a way to make a living later. Uh, I didn't take anything out of there that was a training ground. I didn't get trained to do anything. Um, well, that's my own fault. When I first went in the Army, I signed up to be a auto mechanic, well, Jeep mechanic, truck mechanic, just a mechanic in general. And but I changed my mind in the heat of things, and ended up going to a school that I shouldn't have been in, um, and flunking out anyway. Um, Surprisingly, the Army thought I was, smart enough to, well, and to me, that's still amazing to this day. Um, I was 17 years old. At that time, a high school dropout. I went in the Army to get away from a home life that was, you know, just not tenable for me anymore. And um, but instead of um, sticking with the one thing that could have, helped me later in life, I chose to go to a school that not many people can even get accepted into. And again, that's what sometimes just puzzles me no end. I know I had really good test scores because they told me that. Even when I first went to join up, I took all the battery of the tests at the Army, and there were, or any military, I guess all of the military give these tests. And, they were impressed. I mean, I don't even know why. I don't even know how I did what I did. I don't even know how I absorbed what I absorbed in the years that I was in school that would allow me to do so well on these tests. But I did, and when I asked and volunteered to join the explosive ordnance disposal unit, because that was my mistake right there. I got all glamorous in the thought of learning how to take apart bombs. It was like, ooh. What I didn't see was how a 17-year-old high school dropout who has no idea of how to study. I didn't have any, really, I did not have any idea how to really buckle down and study in school. I didn't, we're just not, I didn't, it's just not something I did not have that ability, and I never learned that ability. It's not something, well, some people may be born with that ability, but I wasn't, and I never learned it, not till much later in life. So the fact that they actually took me into the school, was a pretty big thing for me at the time. But again, what I didn't realize was, what my youth and inexperience would not let me get through it. We got to Washington. I went through I had a course at Fort McClellan, Alabama, a chemical warfare course that I did pass, and went on to the main base at Indian Head, Maryland for the next phase of the training. And during the week, I was fine while we were in school. But on the weekends when I should have been studying, I was up in D.C. partying. My cousin was living up there and had an apartment. She was, in between either freshman or sophomore and junior. She was in between years at college and was living in D.C. For the experience, and for her, she made some seriously lifelong friends out of that time in Washington, D.C. But me, I spent too much time with a couple other friends in the school, traveling up into D.C. to have fun and not think about school. But I was the one that, really let myself down and didn't study even during the week when I should be boning up and taking care of things. My own stupidity or foolishness. I wasn't stupid. I was just ill prepared. Boy, was I ill prepared for that. I really regret that. I really regret that I did that. I should not have volunteered for explosive ordnance disposal training. I should never have done that. That was an over ambitious reach for a 17-year-old kid who has no idea about anything. Seriously overreaching for me. And so, the thing that I could have learned, anything actually, they offered me the chance to go to virtually any school I wanted to in the Army. And that's interesting too, because at that time, there were very few there was very few people joining compared to the numbers that were being drafted. Because in 1967, the draft was in full swing. And for instance, my basic training company of 4 platoons to the company, and each platoon about 30 guys. So you have about 120 guys in a company, plus non-commissioned officers and officers, but just the grunts, there's about 120 of us. Out of that, and I don't know why they did that at that time, but they segregated the draftees from the enlistees. So we had one whole platoon, 30 guys about, of enlistees, that is, guys with a, and at that time they didn't use your social security number for your ID. You had a number that showed your affiliation. Like if you had an RA number, mine was RA, blah 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 blah, and that was you were in, you didn't get drafted, you joined. An RA was a serial number, meant you joined the army. If you had a U.S. serial number, you were drafted into the army. Or, and I shouldn't say anything about the Navy or anything because I don't know how those guys did their serial numbers. I'm assuming the same way, but then after I got out, sometime after that, they changed and just started using Social Security numbers. But at that time, you were designated as to whether you were a draftee or you joined up, and there was a whole lot less of the joiners than there were the draftees. it's, I mean, we had a war going on, and the government was, sacrificing people as fast as they could, and they needed to fill that pipeline all the time. And I mean, seriously, Fort Knox in 1967 was one of the hot training centers of the U.S. Army. I mean, first off, it's an armor command post. It holds the United States gold reserves, but it had a huge basic training complement that you just wouldn't, you couldn't possibly imagine. And it probably rivaled the camps during World War II. I mean, certainly we did not draft nearly the numbers that we did during that war. But we were drafting a lot of guys in 1967. And when that draft was going on, those camps, Fort Knox, where else was there? Was the place over, I can't remember the name of it. There's a Jersey place. There was a lot of forts around the country that were processing draftees and joiners, draftees and inductees. I'm not sure what the correct term is for the guys that joined like me. Am I an inductee or a draftee? I'm not a draftee, so I must be an inductee. But anyway, there was so many more people being drafted than there were joining. And these bases were busy. I mean, Fort Knox was one busy place. And I shouldn't even say that. Everywhere I went in the Army from Fort Knox on, especially after I left the EOD school, but everything was busy in those days. They weren't shutting down bases like they've been doing over the last 30 years. They were building and building and building and adding people and spending money like crazy, trying to win that crazy war. And for what I had, still don't have any idea. Turned out it was, I guess, it's hard to say that it was a waste of time. It is what it is. We just did what we did, and because we are the United States government, and we feel like we can do. Our government feels like they can do just about anything they want, so they make war when they feel like it. We're doing it today. Nothing's changed, except that we're not drafting. We're not we're not forcing people into the service. Now, again, and I've said this before, that's not my thought. My choice would be to have everybody that comes of age in this country serve a couple years, basically for free. Give 2 years to this country and see what it does for you. See what you can do for it, actually. John Kennedy said it. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. He said that, and I have written it and typed it thousands and thousands of times. Anyway, guess what? 15 minutes are up again. Here it is, and time to say goodnight. So I hope everybody had a good day and has a good day tomorrow. So take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and be kind out there. Thanks. Good night.